It's time for our mid-season League One predictions. Who goes up, who goes down, and who puts their hat in the ring for playoff glory. Starting with the top two, where the situation is, I would say, similar to the Championship in that it looks like two places, four teams likely to fight for them. Birmingham City, top of the table, on 53 points from 23 games. Wycombe, two back on 51 with Wrexham. They have both played two games more than Birmingham City and one more than Huddersfield, who are 4 points back from Wrexham and Wycombe, six back from Birmingham City. George, do the top two come from this group of four? And if so, who do you fancy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Birmingham and Huddersfield will be the two teams who get automatically promoted out of the league. And I mean, with the 53 points from 23 games is an amazing haul from Birmingham. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Huddersfield are the team that pick up the most points from here until the end of the season, albeit maybe not catch Birmingham for the title. But there are, when picking the top two, I think it's impossible not to have Birmingham in it at home, especially. They are so dominant, they're so good. They're like Leeds in terms of their defensive record and the disparity of chances that, the sparsity of chances that the opposition create against them.
Scarcity?
Scarcity.
Well,
sparsity.
Sparsity.
Sparsity. A city just full of spars. I like Bath. Where was I?
A city famous for its boxing gyms. Spa City.
Yeah. The quality they've got going forward. Stansfield has shown it pretty consistently, but as has Alfie May, who kind of steps up when Stansfield isn't able to do so. It seems almost impossible for me that they won't be in the top two here, even if I'm not fully sold on the fact that we're getting the most out of what could possibly be got out of this group of players necessarily, but it doesn't really matter. They are still, in most of their games, just by far and away the better team, albeit away from home, I still think are maybe not quite as good as they should be, albeit last time I said that they went and beat Wigan 3-0. And then Huddersfield I've been really impressed with. I think the addition of Joe Taylor is a really good one. I think he will be someone who, they top the XG4 charts in the whole of League One. I think Mike Duff, when he gets his claws into a team, as he has done in the past at Cheltenham and at Barnsley, just creates a really good football team. It didn't happen at Swansea for various reasons, but we know he can do it at League One level, and they're absolutely flying now. And if you take out a very strange kind of 3-week chunk of the season where they lost 5 games in a row, they'd be top of the table now. And as I say, I don't personally, I don't think it's going to be really interesting to see Huddersfield hosting Birmingham in a couple of weeks' time, because in my mind that's the two best teams in the league, with maybe the second best team having home advantage, and we'll see when they go toe to toe how they get on. But it wouldn't be a massive shock to me if Huddersfield, given that they're the ones kind of doing the chasing, are the team that pick up the most points in the second half of the season. Obvious doubts about Wycombe right now with the off-field, the managerial question mark. They're obviously going pretty hard in the transfer market, but they've already lost Morley and Taylor, with Joe Lowe, another one who's facing up to some speculation too. And I personally just think that Wrexham are the fourth best team of these four. No shame in that at all, but I would expect the other three to pick up more points from here.
Yeah, Birmingham are in an extremely strong position, aren't they? 2 points more than second and third with 2 games in hand, 6 clear of Huddersfield. With a game in hand. I don't get a sense of complacency. I think that they will retool in January. I think some defensive additions in particular. I wouldn't be surprised if they want another little sugar rush of an attacking addition towards the end of the window just for a laugh. And they are a sensational team when it comes to the defensive side of the game, keeping the ball out of their goal. So much control and territory, and not just that, but work rate out of possession as well to suffocate the opposition. It's really, really impressive. Not as sexy an attack, as you say, compared to the obvious comparison with them is Ipswich from 2 years ago. That's the only team you can really begin to compare them to, given the way they've approached this, given the way they approach their manager hire, and they're certainly not as excited, as fluid, and as good going forward as Ipswich were, but still more than enough to win the league, in my opinion. I've also got Huddersfield. I was kind of hoping we would disagree here. Huddersfield, for similar reasons to what you said, unbeaten in 3 months after that weird spell where they lost 4 games in a row. not just strong and consistent underlying performance data, but improving throughout the season so far, which is a good sign. Whereas Wycombe's, for example, started off super hot, just dropped off a tiny bit, not a huge amount, but just a tiny bit, and they've lost those players, as you mentioned. Huddersfield have already played the top 3 away from home, so they get to take them on at home, which I think is a strength. I mean, Wycombe have been incredible. They've been amazing. They've been so fun, and I'm already kind of regretting not just hitching myself to this bandwagon and enjoying the ride, because if they do finish top 2, it'll be one of the best promotions over the last few years. One thing that I noticed looking at the stats is they're so incredibly strong finishing games. In the last half an hour of games, they've scored 23 goals and conceded 10. It's by miles the best record in the league. There's a sort of personality and a mental strength to it, I think, that they just have everything so locked and loaded right now. They've got a proper squad of like 18 players, particularly in midfield and attack, who, when they make changes, they don't get weaker. They seem to actually get stronger, and that really reflects well on the squad that's been built, and gives me some hope that, the departures of Morley and Taylor and maybe Lowe can be mitigated against. They're obviously being aggressive in the transfer market, but they're one of those teams where I just think, whatever happens with Matt Bloomfield, when you've had a bit of a surprise flyer in the first half of the season, when teams are playing you for the second time, are they a little bit wiser to the way that you're playing? Have they adapted to the fact that you are just one of the best teams in the league? And will they adapt their game to make it harder for you rather than try and go toe for toe? And if so, can you handle that? I don't know, but I think that is a challenge for them in the second half of the season. And as for Wrexham, the stat that stands out for them is they've only conceded first in 5 of their 25 league games. It's an astounding record. They are so competitive, so well drilled, so difficult to score against. They start games so well, and they finish them pretty well as well. Lots of late goals. I like you. I think they're the 4th best team of this group. I think that where they are right now is basically their limit based on the way that they play, on their performances. And they get absolutely every last drop out of what they have and what they put in. They've also got going against them the fact that they've got an absurd disparity between home and away form. 38 points at home in 14 games and 13 points in 11 away games. But they've played 14 at home and only 11 away from home. So they've only got 9 more home games and 12 more away games. That means, to me, that the points per game rate will drop. So I definitely think that Huddersfield will get more points than Wrexham and Wycombe from this moment on. Is it 5 points more? That's basically the main question. And I'm going to say yes, Huddersfield second behind Birmingham. In the playoff places, let's take a look. I mean, I've got basically 2 up for grabs here with, I expect Wycombe and Wrexham to be in the playoffs, no doubt about that. You've got Barnsley, who are currently in 5th, and Reading in 6th. They're on 42 and 41. Outside the playoffs, Stockport on 38, then 3 teams on 37, Leyton Orient, Mansfield and Bolton. You've got Charlton, 3 back from them on 34, 7 points off the playoff places. All these teams have played either 23, 24 or 25 games, which muddies the water a little bit. Then you've got a group of Lincoln, Rotherham, Stevenage, Exeter, who are all between 9 and 10 points off it. I like Barnsley right now. And I think that they'll be a playoff team again, like the last 2 seasons. I'm a bit worried that I'm being influenced by recent wins. Recency bias is a huge issue for predictors like us. But I just like what I see in terms of the manager, Darryl Clark, my perception of him, the way that the team plays and the personnel that they have. I think they're improving defensively, where I just think they've been really wobbly the last few years. There is one nagging thing, looking at some stats, where the last half an hour of games, they've scored 10 goals, they've conceded 18, minus 8 goal difference in the last half an hour of games, which seems completely unideal. But I'm backing Barnsley. I'll let you pick up to talk me through the playoffs before adding my 6th.
Yeah, fully on board with Barnsley as well. You said there are 2 spots up for grab in your mind. I'm almost going as far as I think there's 1 spot up for grabs. I know that Barnsley are not there yet, but I'd be really, really surprised if given the way they're going at the moment, given there's also like a settled nature to them as well. Like you look at other teams we're going to talk about now, whether it's Stockport, who are going through a bit of an issue in terms of injury crisis and also losing their best player and possibly the best player in the league in Louis Barry, whether it's Wycombe, who are facing up to losing loan players, bringing in loads of new players from abroad and maybe losing their manager. In Barnsley, you just got a team where we know what they are. We know that Darryl Clark is probably not going to be on the list of possible managers for a championship move, even though I think he'd probably deserve it. We know that the quality they've got on their side and players like Davis Keeler done, and Adam Phillips. Although I have seen Phillips has been linked to a move in the last week or so. But I think they're just such a solid option. And also, when you know, sometimes at this stage of the season, as we'll probably get onto in League Two, start of play can be a bit of a concern when you've got a team who do like to get it down and play. Often they can kind of come unstuck in the second half of the season. And again, with Barnsley, it's relatively direct, and I can't really pick any holes in them and their top six challenge. So they're definitely in there for me. The other team I've picked are Orient, and often I think when we do these pods, I would really look to take on a team like Orient, a team who started the season really poorly and then go on this merry dance and run through the table and find themselves on the brink of the playoffs, because realistically teams don't tend to continue to maintain that kind of a challenge, but realistically they don't need to be as good as they've been, winning games so consistently, because they're now already in mid-January on the brink of the playoffs. And there are so many reasons to like them. Again, really solid. Richie Wellens is someone who, again, we know when there's a big disparity in the jobs that he does, things often go really, really right or really, really wrong. And right now they are going right. And they've been going right for a long time at Orient, to be fair to him. Also, the loan players, where there's been an assumption that Jack Curry would go back to Oxford, arguably been the best left back in League One this season. Looks like he's staying put. Jamie Donnelly, a couple of months ago, Orient fans would have been happy to see him sent back to Spurs, now a key player for them. Being reported this morning that Dylan Markandé, having been recalled from Chesterfield, is being sent back out on loan to Orient, who would be, I think, a brilliant signing and add a lot to them going forward. Their underlying numbers are really strong in this period. They're not unsustainable numbers. It's a bit like Wickham in the early part of the season, where like you look at the results, you look at the underlying numbers, and you're like, yeah, it marries up. They're currently one of the best teams in the division. So, you know, with reasons to doubt other teams in here, Stockport being one of them, and other teams kind of in the vicinity. You know, I looked at Mansfield, who again I think are kind of going the right way, and Clough have a very canny operator who can take them into the picture here. But right now you've got a team who are currently just outside the playoffs, who are performing as one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the league, and there's no reason why that can't continue with the settled squad and key additions being made to it. So let's not overcomplicate things. I think they'll break into it.
Did you mention Bolton there and I missed it? Or you just not even in the conversation?
Well, you can't mention all of them, you know. They of course they are.
I'll mention them. Because it was quite a newsy, you know, it was another newsy weekend on that front. Obviously thumped by Rotherham 3-1, but 3-0 down before a consolation. Poor performance, all confidence gone. Performances have nosedived. The data backs that up. This isn't anymore the case, as I thought it was previously, of a team that were still very good in general, who were just losing games, you know, some kind of volatile games here and there, and maybe had a vulnerability or a sort of character defect in the big games. It's past that now for me. It's not, Bolton are a good side, but they've got an issue where they can't win the big games. I don't think they're a very good side right now. And the fans of chanting very loudly for Everett to be sacked. It's only a couple of weeks ago that the chairman, Sharon Britton, reaffirmed her loyal support, as she put it, for the manager. She said, I think loyalty and continuity bring long-term success. That is our model, which I believe is different from others. It brings frustrations at times, but getting to the top is never easy. As a board, we are not afraid to ask tough questions and challenge appropriately. While some results have been unfavourable, we remain very much in contention for promotion. I believe in the progress we're making and remain confident in Ian's leadership. Interesting quotes. She went on to say, when times are challenging, we must come together as a club, a community and a town, as we always do. I trust in you, supporters, as much as I ask you to trust in me and my belief in what we're doing together with our manager and team. But it's not working. She didn't placate the fans with that show of support, and the team hasn't gone any length to placate the fans either. Everett, very much digging out his players after that. So it's not a good moment, I think it's fair to say, for Bolton, and it'd be interesting to see whether that loyalty from the owner towards him will be maintained, or whether she will look to make a change due to sort of strong public opinion. But I don't have them making the playoffs. Reading are in the playoffs at the moment, in 6th spot. One thing that they have massively going for them, Reading, is that they've played 11 home games and 13 away. So they've got a surplus of home games to come. And they are certainly good at home. 9 wins and 2 defeats this season for 27 points in 11 games. So that should have an impact, you'd think. Certainly looks that way on paper. Obviously, they lost their manager, Ruben Sayes. But Noel Hunt has started very well. And the team doesn't appear to be showing any issues following the departure of Sayes and Hunt coming in, which is a great sign. They have the easiest fixture list to come if you look at soccer stats and the way that they project forward the strength of schedule for the rest of the season. The off-pitch stuff is too scary to ignore when we're looking at this group of teams for me. So I'm going to predict that it will lead to them dropping out, but I hope that it doesn't. I think Reading making the playoffs is one of the things I hope happens most across the 3 leagues right now. Stockport, on the one hand, Louis Barry, he's gone. He was scoring goals from nothing, more so than anyone else in the league. On the other hand, numbers are still super strong. Doesn't suggest that Barry was the only thing winning them football matches. Decision-making of the club, consistently strong over a long period of time. Quality in the transfer market, consistently good over a long period of time. The temperament of the team and the manager, pretty strong. I mean, they've been challenging for promotion for the last 3 or 4 seasons in different leagues. So there's a lot to like about Stockport. Mansfield are flying. They're 4 points off. I personally think they're kind of at their limit right now. I don't expect them to finish within 4 points of the playoffs, but so impressive recently. Could easily be sleeping on them and Nigel Clough. And they're playing most of this group of teams we're talking about. They've got them, almost all of them at home, which again is a point of strength. For Charlton, they just have to start games better, right? Once ahead, once they've scored first, they've won 9 out of 9, but only scoring first in 9 games so far suggests that they're not that good at 0-0. In the last 15 minutes of games, they've got one of the best records. So, that depth of squad, the quality of squad is helping towards the end of games. Lee Byrne's back and contributing in a big way. And Nathan Jones is known for really extended runs of good form and clearly has won promotion in the past. But they've got to play this whole chunk away from home, basically, and I hate that for them. So I'm leaving Charlton aside, and I'm a bit annoyed because I really thought we wouldn't have the same top 6, but I am throwing my hat in the Orient ring as well. What a strange team this season. 11 points from their first 12, followed by 26 points in their next 12. And while that points return will surely normalise a little bit, I still think it levels out at a really strong playoff chasing level. The numbers are really good. They have played almost exclusively bottom half teams, and 7 of the last 12 are at home, so it's a bit of a concern. You know what? Yeah, I'm going for Orient. And just to touch on a couple of the teams down below them, Lincoln, Rotherham, Stevenage, Exeter, they're all 9 or 10 points back. I will just say that of that group, Rotherham's the most feasible, isn't it? Just based on the manager that they have. Good recent results against some good teams, and obviously a fairly strong squad as well, but I think they've probably got too much ground to make up. How about League One relegation? In my eyes, this could be the easiest of the lot, given that there's been a group of 4 teams who have been in it and are still in it, and there's a 5-point gap between Bristol Rovers and the relegation zone. That's Crawley, who are on 20 points, Shrewsbury and Cambridge on 17, and Burton on 14. Above the relegation zone, you've got Rovers and Peterborough on 25, Northampton 26, Wigan 27, Blackpool up in 30, 10 points above it. George?
So this is the part of the season where I always say it's important to remember that gaps at the bottom end of the table are very different to gaps at the top end of the table. And yes, a 5-point gap right now might seem like quite a lot, but when effectively these teams are sitting ducks because they aren't moving very fast, it doesn't take a very long period of sustained form in order to improve situations very quickly. And we've kind of already seen that with Crawley, Shrewsbury and to an extent Cambridge early on in the season, where all 3 of them have been kind of cut adrift at different points of the season and then have gone on little runs that have inserted themselves back into the reckoning. And there are, I would say, 3 teams, definitely Bristol Rovers, despite the change of manager, definitely Northampton, despite the change of manager, and Peterborough, who currently are really, really struggling after the injury to Kwame Poku, and it looks like the key players might have to leave in January too, who I think are currently sitting ducks, who I consider to be teams that may struggle. And in terms of the appointments that Bristol Rovers and Northampton have made, there's no reason to necessarily believe that either are absolute upgrades on what came before them. Certainly in Northampton's case, where Kevin Nolan might be a very well-respected figure who did okay at Orient prior to that, but John Brady's the job that he did there and the gap that Brady leaves makes it an incredibly hard job, I think, for Nolan to come into. So my kind of big stance here is that I think one of Crawley, Shrewsbury and Cambridge will get out of this mess. I think Burton will go down. I think that gap, currently 11 points, I see no reason why Burton are going to go on the kind of run that is necessary in order to get themselves out of it. We saw massive investment in the summer. We saw a change of manager in the summer. We've seen another change of manager since. I think Gary Bowyer is a pretty good appointment, but I personally think the best thing that Burton Albion could do is make peace with the fact they're going to get relegated and probably see League Two as maybe a better environment in which to implement the kind of style of football and the data-driven approach that they want to do. If you are suddenly a team with a top 4, top 5 budget, that is the time to implement the kind of philosophies that we wanted to see. And I'd probably go as far as saying the best thing that could have happened to the Nordic Football Group would have been for Burton to get relegated last season and for them to come into a League Two club and try and do what they did this season in League Two. And I think things may have gone very, very differently for them. And I anticipate that if they do go down, things will be better next season when they're able to flex their muscles a little bit and probably have a team that are technically better than the opposition rather than trying to play away with players that are deficient to your opposition, which hasn't really worked up to now. I think Cambridge will go down despite that kind of mini revival under Monk. Performances at the moment are really, really poor. Struggle to see a massive reason why they won't, and it feels like Monk is kind of getting on borrowed time to an extent. Which leaves Crawley and Shrewsbury. Crawley have improved under Rob Elliott, and initially, again, I kind of worry that their style of play and the way they approach games may not be that conducive to a survival bid. And that's why I think a team who've been on borrowed time for so long in League One in Shrewsbury Town might be the ones who capitalise should one of Cobblers, Gas or Posh really hit the buffers. Because, again, in Ainsworth, you've got a manager who we can be pretty confident are going to make them hard to beat. He's already made them hard to beat. He's already made them a team that aren't conceding many goals. Their games, kind of the goal line of their games has been driven down. I think they will pick up points because of that, because their games are going to be low scoring. And if he's able to kind of bottle something and find a bit of a spark, he's the kind of person I can see getting a team on that mini run. It's not much needed. It's just a run of wins to catapult themselves out of the position they're currently in. And I think they might be the most likely to do it.
Yeah, you've got a problem though. You've got a problem here. I can see it. I can see them winning enough games 1-0 with goals scored by centre-backs from set pieces to make it very interesting. But, brutal schedule. Here's their games coming up. Wrexham at home.
They beat Birmingham, didn't they?
Charlton away. Stockport away. Mansfield at home. Rotherham away. Reading away. Bolton at home. Those are, outside of Rotherham, who, to be fair, I did mention in the playoff chat, all teams we're talking about for top 6 or top 2, that's very, very difficult for them. You're right that, in their last 4, what is it, a 1-0, a 1-0 win, a 1-0 defeat, and 2 1-0 draws. It's all very Ainsworthy, which is great, but go on.
Also worth pointing out that they've still got to play all the teams we're talking about here. So Burton, Cambridge, Crawley, and Bristol Rovers on top of that as well. They've got to play them all at home still.
Yeah.
So that is, what's your
it's nice.
XP
Stuff,
out of 12 from those 4?
4.
No way.
I think those are the games I think those are the important games where they might find it hard to win because they're so used to bunkering down.
But there will be. I mean, again, this is. I guess there are 2 ways to look at it. But I would say they will go off unless things really change. They'll probably go off as favourites in all 4 of those games. So. And taking points off the teams around you. I mean, it's lots of ways.
It's exciting. It's exciting. We've got a difference in prediction in League One, which is fun. Burton, I'm calling gone as well, same as you. They've already played the bottom 6 all at home, except for Cambridge. Their numbers are atrocious. The squad makeup doesn't scream Great Escape vibes to me. Cambridge, I'm searching for hope. I'm struggling big time. For me, based on what I just said about Shrewsbury, I think their fixtures in the next 2 months mean that basically in 6 weeks' time, there is going to be a gap that is just way too big. It's already 8 points. I think in 6 weeks' time, it's likely to be 11 minimum, and then they'll be running out of games. For me, it's between Crawley and, taking on board what you said about the teams above the relegation zone, I think Northampton the most likely to drop. There's 6 points between these teams at the moment, but there are 2 games in hand for Crawley, and they play Northampton at home. For Crawley, I instinctively feel hope, but there's a lot of ifs, and there's still a lot of issues. Like, they are conceding goals for fun still, and if they keep conceding goals at this rate, they don't really have a chance, even if they are probably the liveliest attacking team in the group that we're talking about. If Quaterna can get fit and stay fit, they have, if we're just talking about this group of teams, probably the most exciting attacking player in this group. If they could have some semblance of a settled back line, which I don't think they have had, now that Conroy's fit, can he just be the core, the rock in the middle of that? And then, can you just get that right, Rob Elliott? Because I think there's potential for them to stay up, but it is a lot of ifs. In their favour is the fact that they play basically all of the bottom half at home. They still got Stevenage, Exeter, Wigan, Northampton, Peterborough, Bristol Rovers, Cambridge and Burton. 8 teams at home. And if they get results from them, then the things will get quite interesting. I think I like them to stay up above Northampton. Northampton, similar to Shrewsbury, have an absolutely brutal schedule. In their next 11 games, they play 8 of the top 10. They don't have a record against these good record against these teams. There's a bit of a gut feeling thing here with Northampton. Obviously, it's early in the Kevin Nolan era, but even under Brady and still under Nolan, for me, like, their wins are always kind of a surprise. There's very few games that Northampton go into where I expect them to pick up all 3 points, and so that's just a gut thing. I'm going to pick Crawley to stay up over Northampton to go down with Shrewsbury, Burton and Cambridge. You mentioned Peterborough and Bristol Rovers. I mean, I can't say many positive things about those 2 teams. Other than that, I think they're lucky the bottom 4 are so poor and have picked up so few points in the first half of the season. So who's your 4th?
My 4th relegated team.
Yeah, you think Shrews are staying up, so who's
Cobblers.
Going down? Oh,
Cobblers, right. Yeah. Northampton. Sorry.
No, I thought it'd be more interesting if you said posh. That's fine. Before we move on to League 2, shout out Exeter City for beating Oxford, reaching the 4th round of the FA Cup for the first time in a million years. Saw some quite lively performances on the highlights from Caleb Watts, which is exciting. Nice goals from Dimitri Mitchell. Shout out Wickham, obviously some cup glory there, albeit in beating a team in Portsmouth from the league above. They're only like 4 places above them in the football pyramid. Excited to see Wickham really looking abroad and laying some big wedge down for some signings in January, and excited to see how that goes for them. But that's the end of the League One segment.